Was African spirituality merely barbarism? Was it just about blood-sucking savages just looking for who to kill and sacrifice to their gods? Was it all about sacrifices, voodoo, and all of the dark things that we see as depictions of African spirituality in today's world? Is there anything that we can learn from African spirituality? And who was Samuel Ajayi Crowther? Did he single-handedly demonize the whole of African religion? In today's video, we're going to be discussing all of that and so much more. I hope you watch this to the end, and I hope you enjoy, and I hope you subscribe.
What folk are dealing with is removing Africans from Africa, removing African history from the story of African people, and assign it to other people, whether that history is political history, scientific history, or religious history. Our story has been stolen and has been used by others to empower themselves, and that's one of the reasons why we are the most physically, emotionally, economically, and spiritually disenfranchised people on this planet, because we don't know our story. We listen to everyone else's interpretation of us, and all of those interpretations present us at our lowest. So until we can step back and be courageous enough to identify that African that is in us and begin to see the world through their eyes, we will always be inferior to others.
The Greeks
and worship the gods of others as opposed to worshiping our own gods.
The opening video is by Anthony Browder, a renowned symbologist, talking about the effect of African spirituality, philosophy, culture, and mythology being stripped away from Africans and replaced with others. But what really is African spirituality, and what is it all about? African spirituality, or indigenous African religion, refers to the indigenous or native religious beliefs of African people before the Christian and Islamic colonization of Africa. Indigenous African religions were by nature plural, varied, and usually informed by one's ethnic identity. Where one's family came from was usually the definition of what African religion they practiced. For instance, the Yoruba religion has historically been centered in southwestern Nigeria, the Zulu religion in South Africa, and the Igbo religion in southeastern Nigeria. For starters, the word religion is problematic for many Africans because it suggests that religion is separate from the other aspects of one's culture, society, or environment. But for many Africans, religion can never be separated from all these things. It is a way of life, and it can never be separated from the public sphere. Religion informs everything in traditional African society, including politics, art, marriage, health, diet, dress, economics, and death. This is not to say that indigenous African spirituality represents a form of theocracy or religious totalitarianism. Not at all. African spirituality simply acknowledges that beliefs and practices touch on and inform every facet of human life, and therefore African religion cannot be separated from the everyday or the mundane. African spirituality is truly holistic. For example, sickness in the African worldview is not only an imbalance of the body, but also an imbalance in one's social life, which can be linked to a breakdown in one's kinship and family relations, or even to one's relationships with one's ancestors. African spirituality is defined as breath, that which animates you. It is drawn from ancient ancestors and Kemites from Egypt who called spirit Ka, that which lived before you. Spirituality, on the other side of things, is your nature, is what your essence is. It's what makes you alive. Spirituality is closer to your nature than anything else because it's about you having an experience rather than living vicariously by a concept. In African spirituality, according to Adolfo in 2016, there are 6 components that one needs to take into consideration, which include nature of existence, order and balance, the interconnectedness of things, social and spiritual hierarchy, cyclical existence, and spirit of being. These 6 components hold true in understanding African spirituality. Africans believed that all things have an impact on each other, and this interconnectedness and interplay is universal. There exists a cause and effect relationship to be found in all experience, as well as acts and thought, which will inform our thinking and relation. Likewise, it is also evident in the Bantu concept of Ubuntu that each member in a community has a bearing on others within it, and the well-being or otherwise of the whole is not separate from that of the individual or their immediate environment. The order and balance of the universe are based on the opposing forces that are complementary to each other, because order and balance is a necessity for harmony between the realms of existence. The understanding of these forces in the order and balance is that if force is bad, it will come with lessons to be learned, as does the good forces, and overlook reasons for being in our lives which will cause disharmony and disorder. So how did a religion that seems harmless and predominantly concerned with the ebb and flow of life become so deeply associated with barbarism, demonism, and satanism? Samuel Ajayi Crowther was a Yoruba linguist, a clergyman, and the first African Anglican bishop of West Africa. He was born in the 1800s and he was born in Oshogun, which is now Oyo State in Nigeria. Him and his family were captured by Fulani slave raiders when he was just about 12 years old, and this took place during the Yoruba Civil Wars, notably the Owo Wars of 1821 to 1829, where his village Oshogun was ransacked. Samuel Ajayi Crowther was later resold to Portuguese slave traders, where he was put on board to be transported to the New World through the Atlantic. So how did a man with such a background later become the first Anglican bishop in Nigeria? Samuel Ajayi Crowther was freed from slavery at a coastal port by the Royal Navy's West African Squadron, which was enforcing the British ban against the transatlantic slave trade. The liberated people were settled in Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, Ajayi adopted an English name of Samuel Crowther and began his education in English. He adopted Christianity and also identified with Sierra Leoneans' then ascendant Creole ethnic group. He studied English and was ordained as a minister in England, where he later received a doctorate degree from Oxford University. Crowther was cared for by the Anglican Church Missionary Society (TMS) and was taught English. Due to his remarkable intellectual qualities, Ajayi was sent to school, and within a short period of time, he was able to read the Bible with ease. It is no wonder that he converted to Christianity promptly. On the 11th of December 1825, he was baptized by John Rayburn, naming himself after Samuel Crowther, vicar of Christ Church, Newgate, London, and one of the pioneers of the CMS. And this is where some of the stigmatization against African spirituality began. To my knowledge, the concept of Satan did not exist in African spirituality prior to the existence of Abrahamic religions. Hence, the mistranslation of Eshu, also known as Eshu Elegbara, a highly revered indigenous Yoruba deity by Samuel Ajayi Crowther, as the devil, is perhaps the most salient example of how African spirituality became associated with Satan. Being that he is one of the most prominent figures in the history of evangelism in Western Africa, he was tasked in the mid-19th century with the job of translating the Bible from English into Yoruba, and subsequently mistranslated Eshu as the devil. As an evangelical African Christian, Ajayi Crowther was on a mission to convert the pagan African people, and he described Yoruba land as a land of heathenism, superstition, and vice. This is how Crowther translated Eshu in the Yoruba Bible. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophets are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. Asiwo Eshu ti o ton wo Yeah, this is as far as my Yoruba can carry me. I would have loved to read the whole paragraph in Yoruba, but I would rather just take a screenshot and post it up so I will not end up murdering completely the Yoruba language. But in this passage, he translated the devil to be Eshu. And by equating issue to the devil through translation, Ajayi Crowther succeeded in demonizing an entire spiritual tradition. Even till this day, many Yoruba Christians view issue and the entire pantheon of Yoruba deities as the epitome of sin and evil. Ishu, however, in the Ifa tradition is not the devil, but a trickster. Ishu is known as a trickster god of the Yoruba of Nigeria, an essentially protective, benevolent spirit who serves Ifa, the chief god, as a messenger between heaven and earth. Ishu requires constant appeasement in order to carry out his assigned functions of conveying sacrifices and divining the future. One myth depicts Ishu as tricking Ifa out of the secrets of divination, another in which Ishu restores Ifa from his imprisonment in the palm tree, casts him as the founder of the Ifa religion. Now, when you look at this story closely, you can see that Eshu is known as a god who dances in between two worlds, but not necessarily a devil that predicates evil in his wake. But because he's the only god in the Yoruba pantheon that has some element of mischief attached to him, he was hence described as the devil in English. Now, this particular misrepresentation was one of the main things that equated African spirituality to the devil. Recent dictionaries such as Kayode Fakinlade's 2003 Modern Practical Dictionary have retained the original evil association. To call someone Omo-Eshu in Yoruba today means child of the devil. In reality, Eshu is a trickster deity in Yoruba cosmology, but he has nothing to do with the devil. He is the deity that acts as an intermediary between the spirit and the human world. In voodoo practice, he is known as Legba and is used in the Ifa geomantic divination system. But through Samuel Ajayi Crowther, language was used as a tool for cosmological imperialism to equate African spirituality to Satan in parts of Africa. Now, judging from the life and times of Samuel Ajayi Crowther, we can quite understand why he was eager to cleanse his people from paganism as he saw it and to open their eyes to this new world, because it was through this world that his life was transformed and he was able to make meaning out of his life and become an influence in his society. So one cannot particularly blame him for doing what he had to do to make the task he had been assigned with simpler and easier to assimilate by the common Yoruba man. This is one of the ways in which African spirituality became synonymous with Satan. Secondly, African spirituality was also demonized because of its association with slave rebellion and uprising. Slave masters believed that through these spiritual traditions, slaves could coalesce and fight for their freedom. The practices were therefore discredited and banned. The most cited example of a slave uprising sparked by voodoo practitioners is in the Haitian Revolution, which went on between 1791 to 1804, which started on the 14th of August 1791. Dottie Bookman, a prominent enslaved African leader and voodoo priest, led a secret ceremony at Bois Cayman to rally African slaves to overthrow the French, led by Napoleon Bonaparte. The resulting revolution led to the first free black nation, Haiti, in the Western Hemisphere in 1804, and inspired black revolutionary actions across the globe. Most recently, evangelical Christians like Pat Robinson have claimed that Haitians made a pact with the devil in exchange for their freedom. Continental Africans also used African spirituality to inspire several anti-colonial struggles which made them despised. In the First Chimurenga Rebellion in 1896 to 1897 in Rhodesia, present-day Zimbabwe, ancestral spiritual medium Mbuya Nehanda Chawe Nyakasinka co-led a revolution against the British after the introduction of an exploitative hot tax in 1894. Colonialists were so afraid of the empowering potential of the slaves' spiritual and herbal practices that they enacted laws against them. These barriers forced many African religions in the diaspora to go underground in secrecy. Finally, popular culture, especially Nollywood, Nigeria's Hollywood, has played a significant role in perpetuating negative stereotypes about African spiritual practices. It is not uncommon to see images of pins and dolls, zombies and black magic on screens, in films and TV shows. Nigerian Nollywood produces thousands of films every year that depict African spirituality, pejoratively referred to as juju, as satanic and backward. From an early age, most of us watched African movies with such storylines and came to the conclusion that traditional African spirituality is always a malicious satanic practice that needs saving. Through language, colonial laws, and popular cultural depictions, traditional African spiritual and herbal practices have been portrayed for centuries as a force of evil throughout the world. This reality starkly contrasts historical accounts and personal interactions with hundreds of thousands of practitioners who have used these African traditions to heal, liberate, and benefit society. African spiritual traditions will continue to be stigmatized and wildly misunderstood because most portrayals of African traditions are made by non-practitioners. There's an African saying that goes, until the lion learns to tell his tale, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Indeed, until we can learn to project our stories and our tales from the point of view of understanding of ourselves, our cultures, and our traditions, it will continue to be projected and show us at our lowest, our most savage, and our most barbaric. Every culture, every tradition, every religion started from somewhere, and every country has a history. It is important for us to learn from our history rather than discard it altogether as satanic and demonic. This is as far as we can take on this video, and I want to say thank you to everyone who has watched this far. Please, if you enjoyed this, don't mind to leave a like, a subscribe, and a comment for me. I really appreciate, and it really helps me. If you've not seen the first part of the video, the link is right there, and I'd love for you to click it. If you do, I'll see you there.